Hi, everyone, and welcome to The Writer's Edge. I'm your host, Christy Stratus, and tonight we are going to be talking about writing holiday-themed books and stories. And of course, as always, even though we have some set topics, please leave your questions in the chat and we will be happy to get to them. If we run out of time and you still have questions, I will definitely copy them over and put them in the comments afterwards so that all the panelists have the chance to answer your question. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to our channel right down below and hit the notification bell so that you know when we are posting a new video or when we're going live. So first, I'm going to let each of our panelists introduce themselves, and then I will also introduce myself. And of course, as this is holiday themed, we're going to make sure that we mention whatever holiday books we have out recently because everyone here has one. So let's start then with Kit.
Okay, I am Kit Morgan. I write sweet historical and contemporary Western romance. And I have actually just released a Christmas book today, which is for Deborah Holland's Montana Sky Kindle Worlds called Christmas with the Joneses. I actually have another Christmas book in that series. And on December 1st, I released The Partridge, the First Day, which is the first book in a multi-author series set, 12 authors, 12 books, called The 12 Days of Christmas Mail Order Brides. And we released, according to the partridge, the dove, the three French hens, every author got part of that. And 12 days have gone by and now they're all out.
That is really cool. Thanks so much for being here. And next is Heidi.
Okay, hi, I'm Heidi Cullinan, and I have published, I write primarily LGBT romances, primarily, so far only gay romance, but I have some lesbian romance coming out next year. I have published 6 holiday romances, and 4 of them are set in a single small town. The series is called Minnesota Christmas, and there is now this year, out this Tuesday, in fact, there is a spin-off series set in the same town, in the same universe, a new series called Christmas Town, and that book was called The Christmas Fling, and also out a couple weeks before that is a novella continuation from a different series that has nothing to do with Christmas. That book was called The 12 Days of Randy. It was from the Special Delivery series. Yes, normally I write mostly contemporary, but a little bit of everything. But yeah, I've published quite a few holiday romances. I really like them.
Great, thanks so much. And finally, we have Libby.
Okay, thank you, Christy. My name is Libby Esther, and I'm the author of the Jewish Regency Mystery Series, which is about the Jewish community that was living in London at the time of Jane Austen, when Jane Austen was writing her novels. And as part of that series, I do have 2 holiday-themed novellas. One is for a holiday called Sukkot, which I think in English is the Feast of Tabernacles. It's called What's in a Flame. But a couple of days ago, I don't know if you guys know, but we're in the middle of Hanukkah right now. So at the very last minute, I did just publish a novella, which is called The Melancholy Menorah. And I also have a standalone holiday-themed book, which is called The Latka in the Library and Other Mystery Stories for Hanukkah, which is a spoof of Agatha Christie mystery stories. And for this Hanukkah, it just came out in a large print edition, in addition to the ebook and the small print edition. So that's what I have for the holidays.
Excellent. I'm glad you could all make it. We have a really awesome group here tonight, so I'm excited to get down to it. My name, as you know, is Christy Stratus. I am the author of the Dark Victoriana collection, and that includes the books Anatomy of a Darkened Heart and Lock and Key, neither of which are holiday related, but those are what I've published so far. I am also on Wattpad with a couple of free short stories, and both are under 1,000 words, so you can check me out there as well. So let's get right into this. Let's start with a general question. How about telling us what made you first decide to publish a holiday book? And you know, this is open to everyone. I would love for each of you to answer, though.
All right, I'll go. Sorry, I think we all decided that we started at the same time there. So I have a weird story on why I decided to start. Mine was a real lark. I was actually supposed to be writing another book. It was contracted, and I was late, and I was frustrated. And it was actually over. Like it was like during the holidays, and we were going to my in-laws, and I I think my agent and my husband and everybody had said, put the book down. And so I did. And, you know, being an author, it took me about a day. And I was like, well, now I'd like to write something else. And so I told myself I couldn't do that, which made me, of course, want to do that more. And I said, well, okay, I'll resist the urge and I'll read something. And I was really in the mood to read a snowed-in story. And I really wanted an LGBT snowed-in story, and I just couldn't find one at that time. And there might have even been one, and I just couldn't find it, and for fate reasons or something. And so I couldn't find one, and so I like had one like percolating in my head, and I'm like, well, you obviously can't do that. So write it down, and that'll get it out of your system. Well, I like 2 days and 20,000 words later, I wrote to my agent and said, well, how about this? And she said, only if you don't get lost in the other book. And I said, well, I'm actually feeling better now about the other book. So I like sort of like went back and forth on the two, and then it was like really fun. And then she sold it, and then the next year it like went really well, and the readers had fun and I had fun, and so I said, I'm gonna do that again. And it just kind of became a thing. But now it's like a thing, and every year everybody's like, what book are you gonna write this year? And I'm like, well, and so some years it's fun, and every now and again it's like, okay, but now I have to like come up with a book. But I mean, they sell really well. So I mean, I've written 30 books, and 6 of them are holiday themed, and apparently it's just going to keep going. So that's my story of how I got started, and like how many of mine are holiday themed out of my percentage, I guess.
I'll go next. For me, it was the first series I ever written. I think I was up to book 6, which happened to leave off at Thanksgiving. So Christmas was just the next logical step to set the next book in. But I had so much fun doing that, and that Christmas book actually ended that series, that I got the bright idea to write an entire series around holidays, not just Christmas, but as many holidays as I could. And that particular series starts out with a Christmas book, and it's a 14-book series. I ran out of holidays, or I'd have kept going. So one book started all that.
Should I go next? So I guess that's me, right? Okay, so just because my mystery series it has Jewish themes, one of the things I like to do with this series is to provide a window into the world of Jewish life and culture, which of course includes the Jewish holidays. For instance, I don't know if my story for Sukkot, which again is this Feast of Tabernacles, which a lot of people don't know so much about. And like I say, I don't know if What's in a Flame is the only mystery story set in a sukkah, but I don't think there are that many, so I like to be able to give a different perspective, add a little something to the typical Regency mystery story. It's going to be a little bit different than what people are going to expect. And, I know that, my Jewish readers, they were like, oh my goodness, there's a story that takes place in a sukkah. I can't believe it. And, even for my non-Jewish, readers, they're excited because they, some of them have heard of sukkahs, like they, in the Bible, like they've kind of heard of it, but they've never actually read anything about what you actually do in a sukkah, so this gives me like an opportunity to share a little bit of information about my culture. And but also, when I was writing the story for Hanukkah, which one of the themes of Hanukkah is, never give up hope. A little light can dispel a lot of darkness. Um, Hooking the mystery into a holiday allows me to give a little bit more depth, to the mystery story, bring in some emotions that maybe aren't always in a mystery story. So I really enjoy that too, being able to broaden the mystery story to also have some of that human interest that comes with a holiday theme.
It's really interesting because two of you sort of almost accidentally ended up with a longer series. We're doing multiple books around holidays. And then actually, Libby, with yours, I had been searching for any kind of, like a Jewish holiday book or something having to do with like learning more about that culture. And I had a really hard time finding anything in depth, so I was thrilled when I came across yours.
Well, if I can just jump in and say something to that, that book, Lock in the Library, I published it so late last year. Hanukkah was almost over by the time it was out. So my sales were so disappointing. I was so heartbroken, but this summer, this large print publisher, they contacted me out of the blue. And the reason why is because their clients are librarians, and their librarians are saying to them, we have so many Christmas themed holiday books. We don't have anything for Hanukkah. And can you please publish something for Hanukkah? And, so I got this contract, and it's been great. So thank you, and thank them. And and you're right. There's not that much out there.
Yeah, that's great. That's really great.
There have been a lot more, there have been a lot of, not a lot, I mean, compared to Christmas, obviously, but there have been several, and increasingly more so, and I enjoy all of them, in LGBT romance. It's not a genre, but as like a subset of like contemporary genres. But when I say contemporary, a couple of them have been like that near historical. Like there's one that was set in the 50s that I've read. I have seen some. I've only seen Hanukkah. I have not seen any other Jewish holidays, but there have been several Hanukkah set LGBT romances that I have read, and they have been. I've really enjoyed them. For that same that Libby mentioned, like the idea of hope. It's that same. I think they speak to LGBT readers and people and allies and people who enjoy reading LGBT romances, and anybody who reads romances, frankly, because they link so well together. Because even if it's not a strictly like a coming out theme or anything like that, romance and hope at all always link well together, but I've noticed there's like a marked uptick and like, in fact, a friend of mine had one come out just a couple days ago. So yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, it's really cool because each of you actually is in an interesting subgenre that is not as easy to find. And that's one of the reasons this is such a great group to have. And so actually that leads exactly into my next question, which is what holidays have you included in your books? And we have touched on this a little bit, but I would definitely like to hear a little bit more in depth since, there's a number that not everybody is going to think about.
Yeah.
Kit, I know that you said that you have ones that are outside of December holidays. When we say holidays, we always think,
yeah,
December,
Yeah, well, in that big 14-book series, I start out with Christmas, then I went right into New Year's. And I did, after that, I did St. Patrick's Day, and then I did 4th of July. Came into, I guess, harvest time, Halloween. Did another Christmas book, then went into Valentine's Day, and I have 2 Valentine's Day book in that series, 2 Christmas books, and ironically, I even have Columbus Day. And the running theme of that particular series is, of course, the book takes place during a holiday time, but also since they're mail order bride books, all of the grooms have no idea the bride is coming. So those are the two things. But when you run out of holidays, what are you going to do?
You'll have to switch countries to grab some more holidays.
Yeah. Well, my readers are actually asking for second generation now. They're like, you did those in the early 1870s. You can jump to the 1900s. It'll be fine.
That's really cool, though. That's great.
Because they love the holiday theme. Anything around, it doesn't have to be a Christmas holiday necessarily. They like just that festive, fun air that comes with a holiday.
Yeah, anybody can jump in. Yeah.
I've not done a ton. I've done Thanksgiving a lot. Well, I like Thanksgiving. Mostly just because I really like to cook. In fact, I had to abandon our great cookie making adventure. We're having a big like family of choice Christmas this Saturday, and we host it. And so we're in the middle of deep prep, and so my husband and daughter are off in the middle of that. And I had to turn over one of the cookie factory missions to them. But I like Thanksgiving for the sense of like family getting together and just feeding everybody, because I always host it, and my sister comes and we make this big menu. And so my characters, if they do Thanksgiving, tend to host and have a big menu. I don't know where that comes from, but I've done Valentine's Day, I've done New Year's. But they also tend to like but all those things, like it's not usually an elaborate Valentine's Day. Like it tends to be like an intimate, quiet, more home-centered date. And like I've never done a New Year's where it's been like a elegant party. It's like, friends at home, it's like, it's very like home gathering. I never do, and nobody's ever like been at an elegant gala, and if they do, they leave. They don't. Like in fact, they were actually literally at one. They were supposed to go to one, and they ditched it and went to Vegas, and because they didn't like with their friends. They didn't want to go to something fancy. Like it's always been like, it's just because I guess I've done lots of. It's always family centered holidays, and if it's not, I turned into one. So
yeah, so that's what you put in your books too, then.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah, so like I say, I've done Hanukkah and I've done Sukkot, and there's another Jewish holiday called Purim, which I used at the end of a book, even though it really wasn't a holiday-themed book. But like I say, I write a historical mystery, and although there's tons of information about the Regency era in general, there is very little about the Jewish community. And I did happen to run across an account from somebody who had lived during that period about Purim, and I was so excited. I was in a secondhand bookstore in Jerusalem, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, it's Purim!" And he saw it. He was a kid, and he's describing what happened. And I said, "I got to put in the book." But but just listening to all you guys and all your holidays now, I am so inspired. I am just like listening to you and thinking, okay, Passover, it is coming up. What can I do? So yeah, so I definitely want to do some more.
That's great. Yeah, exactly. As I'm listening to this, I'm like, man, I didn't think of all the opportunities there really are out there. Like I said, you usually think December holidays, but there's just so much more. And I'm sure there's a lot of variation that could go into that. I'm sure that like no two of these could be the same if, you just do what you feel like doing in your subgenre. There's probably a lot of uniqueness there. We do have a question in the chat. And it's Joe Compton from Going to You Now. Hi, Joe. And he is asking, he says, there is a grand debate among publishers, anthologists especially, that holiday-themed books are stigmatized with too much traditional fodder that dilutes the creative spirit. So his question is, how do you establish your own voice so it doesn't sound cookie cutter? And yes, the pun is intended. Establishing your own voice within these holiday-themed books and anthologies.
I never really thought about it. I guess I just wrote them. Okay, well, I guess I can answer that. So I write I don't really write all over the map, but I definitely have about 3 or 4 different, like slightly different tangents that I write. Like I have some new adult, I have some distinctly adult, and some of mine are, and some of it's like it's a topic for a different discussion, but for to be real succinct and to not like delve off topic, basically because my umbrella is LGBT. um, some of it's more erotic than others, and there's a reason for it. Let's just leave it at that for now, because if I answer any longer, we'll be here all night. But because the different heat levels and often have different like flavors and angles, and when I write new adult has a slightly different flavor, and the setup is all different. But the Christmas books have a different. They are almost more like this like old school Harlequin serial setup, if that makes sense. Um, but they also still have my voice in them too. Like when I started it, like it started out like a lark, and I was like, I thought like, oh, I'm going to keep it simple and light, but I don't do that. I can't stay in that zone without making myself bored, and my readers would get bored too. They go, this isn't a Heidi Cullinan book. And so when I still write those, I still like keep it as a simple layer, but then I get in there and I go, okay, but there's always like the best example is the second book in that Minnesota Christmas series, which is the 4-book series. So it's called Sleigh Ride, and the overall premise is the town librarian and this fix-it guy. It's like opposites attract. Or not attract. They actually hate each other at first, and they have these big fights, and then they sort of just like accidentally do each other, and then they're one guy's mom's trying to force them together, and hijinks ensue, etc. But there's also like this like political undercurrents, and like the librarian is actually from the city, and he's trying to do this like all this big stuff with this like tiny library. And then there's the other guy's like nephew wants to have a doll, and his sister doesn't want to have a doll because she feels like it sends like this message. And then her brother is gay, and he's like, excuse me, the message. And so there's all this like political infighting among the family. And then the librarian is like, he like can't quite resist, so he reads the story called William's Doll, which is a real book. And he like sends this like town scandal because he just sits there in front of everybody and reads this book, and then has these 2 baby dolls, and like invites all the kids up to hold his doll, but says, well, my doll only is like comfortable on boys. And so then all the boys want to hold the doll, and then the townspeople are like, oh my god. And so it's like a small town of like, like 1,000 people. And so, it's like, it's total small town politics. And that was fun for me. That was a great time. And that was totally Heidi Cullinan crap. That was not really, and not that Harlequin style wouldn't do that, but I was totally, if I'd have submitted that to Harlequin, they'd have gone, well, and so, you can make your own flavor you can stay within the feel of like, you're like, so if you're in romance, you can stay within the flavor of, I'm still writing for a Hallmark movie, but you can like kilter it. You just got to decide, like, if you're actually writing for like that new Hallmark romance line or whatever, you have to know what they're actually going to accept. And you can't like do what I did and think, well, why didn't Hallmark take it? Well, because they wouldn't take that. But you have to know where the fences are. And if you're self-publishing, what are your readers going to do? And I think if you're doing a holiday book, after you've already established like where your readers are, if you're basically saying, we've established where our fences are, and now we're going to have some fun with this holiday themed lark, I think that's like a whole other thing. Whereas if you start out saying, I'm going to write this holiday book, that's now you're trying to establish your zone right off the bat, which is different. If that makes sense.
I think it does. Yeah, it does make sense.
Yeah, I think that with romance, I don't really write romance, that's not my genre, but I think that there's more of a danger there, like, what this comment was saying of, cookie cutter, and everybody's kind of doing the same, snow's falling down, and, all that. Actually though, when you're a mystery writer, you've got the opposite problem, especially if you're going to do like a murder mystery, as a holiday book, it's a lot trickier because, let's face it, there is nothing warm and fuzzy about murder, so, and, when you gather, together the pieces of the story at the end for that happy resolution, there's always going to be at least two pieces missing. It's the person who was murdered and the person who committed the murder. So, you have to really, so to a certain extent, the murder mystery part of the story is at odds with the holiday part. And, at least those holidays that are supposed to be sort of happy ending, warm and fuzzy, good feeling, everybody goes out singing. So, one of the things I like about that challenge is it does make you kind of work, because you really can't get away with, just that standard, what tinsel, what everybody else is doing. You have to find a way to make all the pieces come together in a way that's going to be satisfying as a mystery and as a holiday story.
Yeah, and adding to that, like, I write, Western romance, historical and contemporary, and but the holiday, whether it's Christmas or Thanksgiving or whatever, it's an element of the story. It is not the story. It adds to the setting, but the story can be completely different. But it just, the holiday is there, but none of mine actually center around the entire holiday, and that's what the whole story is about. None of them do, because I'm an action adventure writer at heart, and I have murder and mayhem going on. I don't have time for that tree decorating and stuff. Character may go, oh my gosh, I forgot about, we got to get a tree. Oh, wait a minute, I have to shoot you first. Oh, sorry. So it depends on the author. It depends on what you're doing. And yeah, there are a ton of holiday books out there where they are totally centered on the holiday. But there's also quite a few books that aren't, where the holiday is just an element. And so these readers who are looking for those, they are out there. It's just finding them.
Yeah, I think a lot of what all of you have said can just apply to writing in general as well. Once you develop, like, for example, with what Heidi said, once you develop a voice in one genre, for example, it can be tough to switch, which I know, Kit, you have some amount of experience in that for sure. So it definitely, and that's something I struggle with myself, because I've mostly been in psychological suspense, but were I to do like some kind of, I don't know, it doesn't even have to be a holiday. If I was to switch genres, it would be tough, because there's a certain expectation there, of course. So, those are all really good answers. And I think we have like a really well-rounded idea now. So one thing I want to ask you is, do you think it's best? I think most of you have written series, but I'm still going to ask, what do you think is best for the holidays? A holiday series, holiday books integrated into a regular series, or holiday standalones?
I'll go first. I'm in a Facebook group with 4,000 members. Out of those 4,000 members, about 300 are authors. The rest are all readers. And we polled this question last year, and they like it all. But as authors, what do we want to do with that? I've done standalone, I've done the series, I've been in multi-author series. What does every reader like? As a reader, I like all of it. I like series, I like the standalones. I just like it. But there were some, it was kind of an even split. You had your group that liked the standalones, you had this group, you had that group, and they were all pretty evenly spread. And then you had quite a few of them that they like just all of it. So, but what does an author feel comfortable writing? Some people only want to do standalones. some people only want to do series.
Right. Yeah, that's what I was going to say, because it has to be where your heart is,
Mm-hmm.
and if you feel like you have an idea that it's going to be able to sustain a series or a holiday series, because writing a series isn't so easy, but when you can do it, it is so much fun, to watch your characters change and grow. But yeah, I think it just has to be what your heart is. And if you write a series, hey, why not write a standalone if you've got a great idea? Because like the kid's saying, is that there's going to be people who are going to like that too. So yeah, do what you want.
The one thing I'd add for writing series, that you have to, one thing I'd say to watch is if you do too many, and I say that that I wrote like the 4 and the 1. I switched to a new series in the same universe. I'm experimenting with that. I'm going to see how it goes, because I have a lot of readers who are like, they just want to keep going back to that town because they really like it. Well, I have a practical problem because I made it a small town, and from a logical standpoint, this is a town of about 1,000 people, I said, and I keep trying to tell them, I'm like, guys, we have already like totally stretched the idea of how many actual, like, we've already gone well beyond the like statistical average of how many actual LGBT people exist in this town. And like, we're already bursting at the seams. And now you want me to put more people? I'm like, we're importing them at this point. And they're like, we don't care. It's fantasy. I'm like, okay. But at the same time, after you go past like 3 or 4, it's like it's not that it can't work, but it just keeping track of everything gets a little harder, and you start to, I mean, unless you have a super in sync sense of what your readers want and what you want, especially since you're going to be doing them like year after year, for if it's a holiday, like by nature holidays, are like annual, you're going to have to be writing them year after year. You're going to have a harder time like keeping in sync of what you want and what the reader wants, and you're going to have more of a likelihood of some readers going, but that's not what I expected to happen, or that's not how I saw those characters going. And so from that standpoint, after a while it might be good to say, and now this series is done and I'll start a new series or whatever. So I'm trying to, with this series, I'm playing with something where I'm like, well, we're still in the town, but I'm going to focus on this new group of people who can visit the old people. But I don't know how well. We'll see. Might be trying to have my cake and eat it too. So I'll report back on how well this works. But so that's a practical concern that you might have to bear in mind.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I had not necessarily considered the whole small town thing, but I don't, like I said, I haven't written holiday necessarily, but the what I write in psychological suspense in my collection, I do have things happening in the same town, but I don't say how big or small it is. So that is a really important thing to watch for, like the size. And that's probably why, or maybe it's partially why, many city based series or romances or chick lit and stuff can take place in a city, because it's kind of exponential. You can do whatever you want almost. There's a little bit less of a limit to a degree, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about genres? I think that certain genres tend to have more holidays in, like more holiday books in them, or maybe lend themselves more to them. Which genres do you think lend themselves most to the holiday, any holiday writing, in your own experience or from what you've seen?
Well, in romance, I think I've seen more contemporary holiday books than anything else, followed by the historical. I've yet to see a sci-fi holiday.
Yeah,
book.
me too. I know.
Anyone's space.
But wouldn't you love it?
No.
Yeah, that would be really great. I was just thinking that. I'm like, well, now I want to write one.
Paranormal, maybe. I've seen those.
Yeah.
I would like, I was thinking earlier, I was like, well, wouldn't it be cool? I was thinking when Libby was talking, because she was talking about like how like that it makes the like mystery combined with the holiday, like that the hard and soft aspect. And I was like, now I'm like, well, now I want to read a holiday horror, because that would be, I mean, that would be like the ultimate. But because I could totally see that, because with romance it's almost like sugar with then like whipped cream. It's like, like double, and like it's, which is sometimes what you like, but it's, it's like warmth with another blanket, and it's, which is nothing wrong with it. It's just, yeah, it's that's where, sometimes some people are like, no, it's too much. But because some people just don't like them, but the people that do, they really do. But yeah, I like this. I want to see like all the, like, let's put holidays on everything. Let's open all the doors.
Yeah, no, because I can't really, as long as there are people, I really can't see, like, what genre couldn't you do it, holiday,
Yeah.
and really have a lot of fun with it, So, I mean, as someone else said, we all think romance, but hey, any genre I think could really have, some fun with doing a holiday story.
Yeah. The one thing I did want to say was, for my particular subset of romance, the LGBT aspect, I know that the holiday romances people get very. I know a lot of my readers that have written me really cherish them, because not, I mean, not all, but like some of that have written will say, I get a lot of. I've had several men who live in remote areas who will write and say, like, I really enjoyed reading these. They've made me feel connected, and because maybe they are estranged from their own family, or they were before, and it's just like there's this. Everybody wants that warmth, and especially I mean, I'm not gonna lie, this small town that I've created is completely impossible. I mean, it's just everything about it is. I'm just not. I mean, I hope it isn't so ridiculous when you read it that you laugh. But I mean, if you sat down and went, okay, logically, really, I mean, it can't happen. And I know that. I mean, I've lived in small towns, and I write it going, yeah, well, this is what I wish a small town were like, not what it is. But that's like the whole point. I mean, especially at the holiday, my thought is like, that's when you can do that, is you can go, well, we're gonna, at Christmas we can wish away all those, ugly sores. And there's something about that I feel like, again, it's that, like in the same way that I was saying, like the Hanukkah romances, it's the same kind of thing. There's just something about anytime you mix a holiday in with queer romances, it just strikes that, that little edge that really go well together. For some people, they really do need it. And I think that's with any marginalized group. I think it's the same with any romances featuring people of color. And it this there are that's they really can resonate with people, whether they are in that group or they just really are, conscious and looking for that type of story. But
Yeah.
so
Literature is a way that we learn about cultures that we aren't. So definitely, absolutely, I like that too. I'm very into like world lit because I'm not living in Japan and I'm not born, with that culture. So I want to read about what is it like, and what are the differences, and what don't I understand, and stuff like that. I think it's fascinating. So and along the same lines where you were saying that some things are not necessarily realistic, I think a lot of people want like an ideal situation sometimes, something that isn't possible, and it's just kind of enjoyable and you get to live in that place for a short time. I think that that's definitely a good point. We have a couple of questions in the chat, so I'm just going to read those before I read anything else. So Mickey, who is, he owns Creative Edge, which is a publicity company. Hi, Mickey. He's asking, if you have written a series and did no promotion for the first book, but you would like to promote the second, what is your process around that holiday, whatever holiday it is, seeing as most stores don't allow signings? So like, what would your publicity process be in that case?
I mean, I would discount the first book like especially the ebook version, like, and you can advertise that. I mean, that's an easy thing to do, especially at Christmas. I mean, they tend to, I can't speak for everybody, but every year my all my holiday romances sell, like they don't sell like brand new books, but they all start selling. I mean, every year they all go, oh, it's Christmas, let's they all just start floating up again because it's at Christmas time. And so there's a natural effect if it's a holiday book. But I mean, so if you wanted to lift the second book with the first book with the second book, you could discount the first book and it would ride along with that. But that's one, I mean, it's just one thing off the top of my head.
Yeah, for me, is he asking about the second book? Would you promote the second book of the series, not necessarily the first?
Yeah, if you want to promote the second book, it looks like, yes.
Yeah, well, of course, loss leads with the first, or a discount on the second. And it depends on the holiday. Like I have a New Year's bride book, and what I did is I actually discounted or ran a book bub like literally Friday on the first book, and so naturally that second book is taking off like gangbusters. And of course it's a domino effect because this is the big 14 book holiday book series, and of course it's all here comes New Year's. Oh boy, look at that one. And here's the Valentine's book coming up after that. Oh, look at those numbers. Here's the St. Patrick's Day. So it's a domino effect. But a lot of authors have done stacked promoting. So you've got like a BookBub ad, you've got this ad, you've got that ad for that second book. And don't even mention the first book, but they've just done the promos on the second book, which is resold the first book, but done stacked publicity on it. Not just one, but several different ads from different places. And that I've done it myself, and it works very, very well. But this time of year, it's easy because everybody's looking for those types of stories. So it depends again on what holiday is it. Are you going to promote a Halloween book at Christmas time? How's that going to work? So.
My other question would be, has he reached out to any bloggers and have, because that's I keep a running, I have a blogger newsletter that it's on my top of my press kit. And so just over the years that has built up to it's almost 70 people now, and not everybody signs up. But I mean, like when I say I'll actively do, like the last couple of books, I mean, I had a year where my major publisher closed, and so I had to turn over 13 books this year and turn them from a publisher to self-pub. And so most of my books I wasn't able to do as big a tour as I normally do. But when I say yes, I'll do guest posts, and yes, I'll do, and if I say I'm going to do them for anybody that signs up, I mean, I'll get like 25, 30 people. And so that's a whole lot of free word of mouth, and all you have to do is say yes, I'll answer some questions, yes, I'll write you some, all people want is exclusive content. You just have to pull some stuff from the book, and I mean, and if you don't have time for that, there's all kinds of other shorter ways to do it. Make some promotional images, and just, have a press kit. That's like step one. That's free and just sits on your website. I mean, there's so many simple ways to do it, and then add that with ads, add that with this, doing a book, simply lowering the price of the book and tweeting it, putting it on Facebook. That alone, if you have any connection to, if you have any reader base whatsoever, they'll start redoing it for you. You can, I think you have to pay for them now, but you do a Goodreads deal or an Amazon deal or any of those like giveaway books. If you don't have a reader base, build it that way. I mean, there's a lot of ways to get started.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too, because, if you are going to do a promotion when you're discounting the book, I mean, you've got Facebook groups. I mean, I think we sort of mentioned Facebook groups, and for mystery writers, there are all sorts of groups, I'm sure, for romance and everything else. And, one thing I did this year, just because I didn't have a lot of time for promotion, I just started doing the Amazon ads, and, wow, they really work. And so that can be a second book or third book. It's just finding the right copy and the right price point. And, you can get, some sales just through the Amazon ads if you can't get that BookBug, because obviously BookBug is number one, but not all of us can get into BookBug. So the Amazon, is a really nice alternative.
Yeah, and along the lines that you guys have also mentioned, and then I'm going to get to another question in the chat. I see you, JD. I'm going to get you, but I realized that both Kit and Heidi have said, for the most part, at least, it seems like whatever holiday is coming up is like when that book sells. It's not necessarily during the rest of the year, but at that time of year, mostly at least. And I wondered for you, Libby, since it's difficult to find necessarily Jewish historical mystery, you have a really great subgenre there, and you've got a lot of other Jewish holidays in there. Since that's hard to find, do people tend to like buy that all year round, or is it the same exact thing where it's like as we close in on that holiday, that's what they're buying?
I don't think it's something Jewish, but it is something about mystery readers, and maybe it's the same with romance, I'm not sure. But when a mystery reader finds an author, they just read one book and they really like, that one book, they will buy the entire series. I see that, so I'm saying, like, they will just buy everything. Now, does that mean they're going to read the Hanukkah series in the summertime, or are they just going to have it on their Kindle or their phone, whatever, and wait? That I don't know. But, so that's, one thing that's why I will see, my book for Sukkot. And again, I have a feeling a lot of my readers don't know what Sukkot is. So they'll read it in July and be happy. They don't know it's a fall holiday. What do they know? That's fine. But, so I do have this for my novellas, the holiday ones. That is consistent. Something like the latke in the lab and the library, where in my promo stuff I say it's, has Hanukkah in the title. That is more of a seasonal book where the sales go up around Hanukkah time. But again, that sells all the time too, because you got an Agatha Christie fan and they say spoof of Agatha Christie. They're like, yeah, I want to laugh. I'll go for it.
That's very true about mystery books as well. I'm in the group Sisters in Crime, and it does seem like when somebody picks up on a mystery writer that really like fulfills what they're looking for, they want to stick with that author, and that may be the case in other genres too. I just happen to also know that mystery is that way, but maybe Heidi and Kit, maybe you've noticed that happens with other genres as well.
Yeah, sci-fi authors are pretty loyal. I happened upon the Barnes & Noble flagship store the other day. Had to go up to 14th Street in Union Square, and I go, I never noticed that Barnes & Noble before. And I go in there, and my gosh, there's 4 glorious floors. And was on the 4th floor, and this lady came, can I help you find anything? And I'm just sort of going, my, what a big sci-fi section you have. And she says, oh yes, they're very rabid here. And I went, oh, that's interesting. So it's romance, of course, has voracious readers. Mystery, I know. A lot of Westerns, I know a lot of booksellers, and just your good, good down-to-earth gut Westerns, not the romance ones, but the manly Westerns, is a much smaller genre and very small niche, but also rabid. They read them voraciously, but the audience has shrunk. The booksellers have told me over the last 5 years. So I think everybody has their favorites, and of course, different genres they're on the rise and they drop back down and they're back and forth. It's just, what is that reader after? What is it they're looking for? And thank heavens there's plenty of books out there for them to go through and read.
Yeah, I would say, so people who so I mean, there's not people who read gay romances don't necessarily just read gay romances. First of all, there are some people who there's basically two camps. There's people who are like, no, I really just like queer romances or gay romances, or and then there are people who are like, I like romance and I'll read anything. And but the people who especially who really like gay romances, they get they they read all of it, or they have their like set of authors that they'll buy everything from, or almost everything from, and then they do a lot of rereading. And the I definitely have several readers who are like, you're my auto buy author, and they really are. They're like, just if you write it, I'll buy it. Or they'll say, because like I said, I have different, almost like I almost have like several different voices that I go through, and they're like, well, I'll read your new adult stuff, but not that other stuff. And like, well, I don't like it when you write about those young kids, but I'll read, if you write sexy, I'll read it. And they're like, well, I don't like that sexy stuff, that's too weird, but if you write this stuff, so, or I like the Christmas ones, but I don't like the other ones. And so they'll have their things that they go for, and so they'll go through it. I think it depends on the what they're after. And so there are definitely authors, there are definitely gay romance authors who have really, they definitely have like a shtick that they stick to, and then their readers are super loyal. Like I know what I'm going to get, and I'm a little bit of an oddball. And so, but a lot of my readers have figured out, like, well, they've figured out how to code me. It's like, oh, she's doing that again, I'm not going to read that one, or I like that one. And so hopefully I try not to lead them to astray, but I kind of,
yeah, that's interesting the way you put that, coding, like, the different either subgenres or whatever. That's a really good point. So JD has a question for all of you, and his is, would writing in a holiday setting, or would writing in holiday settings lead to more cliches? That's a valid question. Like if you were writing, White Christmas, for example, is a big thing. Does that kind of put you into a place of tending to write more cliches?
I think only if you let it. I think only if that's how you set it up. I mean, if you wanted it to.
Yeah, because I would say that, for any book, really, what you're going to put in, what you're going to leave out. I mean, it should be because it's necessary for the plot, or it's necessary for character development, or the sort of atmosphere you want to create. So, that should dictate, what details you're going to use in your story. And I know, like, say, in a mystery story, for instance, you really don't want a lot of unnecessary holiday clutter, just that doesn't really add anything to your story, or in fact even slows it down. So you do want to, you have to, really think about, is this really going to add something to the story I want to tell? You have somebody coming in your door. This is going to add something to the story that you're going to tell.
That was my tea delivery. Sorry about that.
Or or are you just writing a cliche because you think, oh, well, I'm writing holiday, I gotta have a snowstorm. Maybe you don't need a snowstorm. Maybe it's not going to snow. In your particular story, that's going to be an element that you're going to work into the story. So yeah, I think that's the author's job, is to really avoid the cliches and only use what's going to be that's going to add to your story.
Mm-hmm. Me, I write a lot of humor and comedy in my book, so I might put a cliche in there just for the characters to react to it and go, oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
That's great. Yeah, the whole point, exactly, whatever fits into your actual writing and the point of your story, and definitely things that are superfluous outside of that. I'm definitely a fan of eliminating anything like that. That's how I write as well. Okay, I want to get into something I noticed the other day in a Book Baby email, and this has to do with sales. So I want to just throw this question out there. Book Baby has been putting out some advice. I think they have like maybe 4 different blog posts that have to do with holiday sales, how to promote yourself during the holidays, things like that. And one thing that they recommended is bundling multiple books together. This is definitely a strategy that is used outside the holidays, but they specifically recommended it for the holidays. So I wanted to know if you guys have tried this before, doing holiday or post-holiday discounts. Like, I know that we already talked about discounts a little bit, so I guess more bundling like they suggested. Is that something you typically do, or is it really not, does it not make too much of a difference?
Yeah, I actually do have a what I call like my holiday book set. Box set, I should say. I'm sorry, where it has the first book in my series, which is Tempest in the Tea Room, which is actually perma-free, and then it has 3 of the novellas. And so I put those together into a box set, and now I can't really say it sells so well. The truth is I don't really promote it either that much. So maybe it is kind of hard to find. So it is, discounted. So people who do find it, fine. But it's an idea that I think I had read about somewhere, and so I tried it. But I'd be curious to hear, what the others have done, if they've had more success with it.
Now, I myself have not bundled holiday books for the holidays. I thought of, taking that big long series and dividing the different books up into different bundles. I experimented with stories of one particular family out of that big 14-book series, and I did bundle their stories, but I didn't make it holiday themed, even though those 3 of those books that I used all take place around a holiday, and it opens up with Valentine's Day. But what I did do that was very successful is I wrote a brand new introduction to it of what was going on behind the scenes with this family before the first book in the bundle opens up. And then I wrote short stories to bridge between the end of that book and the beginning of the next book. And then I tied up loose ends from the last book in the bundle. So the reader got another 30,000 words of story, made it into one big, huge book, and it has done very well, because it creates like one great big huge long story. Is what I did by the way I bridged and tied things in, and with your different holiday stories, that's easy to do, bridging with short stories or adding little stories about a character that the reader hadn't known about, and they love it because they get to revisit all those characters and see new characters and new story elements introduced.
That's a great idea. That's a really good idea.
I haven't had until this year, and I didn't. I was a Sam Hain author, and until this year I didn't have even the possibility to do that, and I didn't have my full rights back until June, and I don't even have all my books back out yet, and so that wasn't even something I could have considered yet. But I don't know that I would, because literally every year all my book sales go up, and so I would have to think long and hard before I did that, because I mean, I might in the future. I mean, I've thought about bundling, but I haven't. I have to figure out how I would do that yet, and that's like so many far steps ahead. Like right now, I'm just trying to like not drown and get all my. I tried to get my income back first of all, because I lost all of it this year. But so but for me, I hesitate before I would do it, because I do well. I basically every Christmas, all my income. I mean, all the holiday books, like so like all year long. My husband watches all my he's the management side of the of the Heidi Cullen and enterprise here, and he says that, because I asked him, because I said, so how do they, I know how they did, but I said, so really, how do they do it? Because in general, I prefer not to know like the super nitty gritty, because it just fills my head with nonsense. But so he says, well, overall, they like during the regular part of the year, holiday books do not quite as good as a regular backlist book. But as soon as you hit like, especially hit November, he said they don't do as well as a new release, but they do significantly better than a regular backlist book. So like I said, I have six. So every Christmas, I have six not quite new releases. So I mean, I don't really want to mess with that too much. So that's. But again, this is my first year where I have. I mean, I went from having four self-published titles to now I have. I mean, I don't have them all out, but I have 20 right now. And so I'm in a brand new world. So I'll talk to you next year how I feel about that.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's great. We are actually at 11:01. I would love it if it's okay with you to cap this off with one sort of simple question, and that would be just, do you make sure, this has to do with book covers, which of course make a big difference to sales or can make a big difference to sales. So I just wondered, do you make sure to include something visually related to the holiday, whatever the holiday is for your book, on your book cover? And if not, is it enough, do you think, to include the title, like the holiday in the title, or, you know, do you have it just in the description? Like, how do you handle that so that people visually know, or does it not matter to you?
Yeah, they do like the holiday covers. They like seeing something, whether it's colors, color combinations. That holiday series of mine, it was color combinations plus I did an icon off to one side. If it was one of them, it's Christmas ornaments. Another one, it's a turkey or a concordia or a clover, four-leaf clover for St. Patrick's Day. They like seeing the association.
Yeah, I would say that for myself, for Hanukkah, for sure, I'm going to have a menorah, or I'm going to have a dreidel, something that's going to shout out Hanukkah, right there. For the one for Sukkot, first of all, I just couldn't find a good image, and second of all, Sukkot just doesn't, it's a fun story and people enjoyed it when they read it, but it doesn't have that kind of box office appeal as, Hanukkah's going to have, or Passover's going to have. So that one, because it's called What's in a Flame, the cover is actually a woman, you just see her hand, the lace, lighting, a candelabra. So it suggests the period rather than the holiday. But if it is something like, Hanukkah or Passover, something that really does have a strong visual image, I would for sure try to include that on the cover.
All my Christmas stories definitely have Christmas imagery, and the reissues that I have done as self-published, I have my preferred cover artist did, and she did an amazing job. She was able, because she did them all, she was able to like really tie them all in exactly together, and they're gorgeous, and she does such a good job that people who already own the books keep rebuying them to get the cover. And I'm always like, do you realize that it's just but that I actually don't point it out, but the titles are all for the one series that is 4 books. They're all song titles, like Christmas, like Let It Snow, Sleigh Ride, Winter Wonderland, Santa Baby. It started again. That whole thing was a lark, so it just was Let It Snow. I don't even know where I pulled that out of, but then I got stuck on the loop. Sleigh Ride was easy. But by the time I was getting to the third one, I was like, okay, what am I doing here? And so and the next one was the Christmas Fling is the one that came out this week. And that one was not a song title. That was done deliberately. I was like, we're done with the song titles because we're going to run out of songs. I think the title is important too. It's because it sets the mood. Because like my editor kind of got on me, because like the first draft when I sent it to her of the Christmas Fling, she was kind of like, "This does not feel like a fling," and so I had to go back, and she's like, "Get back in there and make it feel like a fling," and so I did my best to make it feel like a fling. So, um, but I feel like, you know, that like the title, but I mean, her point I felt was well taken, because she's like, you know, she said, I was excited when you sent the title, and I had already had the cover art done, and she said, I saw the cover art, I read the title, it's like, this sounds like a good time. And she said, your story needs, you know, so, you know, reader expectation, you know, if you set the right cover and you set the title, I mean, that makes people go, you know. And when readers knew it was coming and they saw it on social media, I have a Patreon group too, and they're like, oh, I can't wait, you know. So like, you know, you can get them going, you know. So they already knew the series, they knew the town, and so, you know, if you do it right, you can really, like, they didn't know anything about it, they just knew Heidi Cullen writing a Christmas book, here's the title, here's the cover, and they were like already ready to go. And they didn't know anything, they just didn't even know the blurb yet, they just saw the stuff and were ready to go. And that was from like from the title and the cover and previous expectations, I guess. But
that works with everything. Yeah, that's good advice for regardless of whether it's Christmas or not. Whenever there's if there's an incorrect expectation set and then somebody reads it, of course they're going to be disappointed. So that was excellent advice that your editor gave you, and it's something to be super careful of, if, you know, for all the authors out there watching this. So thank you all so much for being here. To our panelists, thank you all so much in the audience for being here. You guys have been awesome. There's been a great chat going on the side. Thank you for your questions. And now we're going to go through, of course, please tell us where we can find you online, and then please do stay tuned, because I'm going to share what the next panel is going to be. So let us know where we can find you online, and let's start with Kit.
Well, you can just go to my website, which is www.authorkitmorgan.com, and you can sign up for my newsletter there. You can like my Facebook page. My Twitter is there. So one-stop shopping.
Great. And just so everyone knows, all of the links are, as always, down below in the well, down below. They're where they go, the description. That's where they are. So you will find each author's website, Amazon page, and mailing list, or if they don't have a mailing list, you'll find their alternative page. So thank you so much for being here, Kit. And next we are on to Heidi.
I am, you can find me on my website. I'm also on Twitter, on Facebook. Both of those are my name, just Heidi Cullinan, like Twitter, Heidi Cullinan, Facebook, Heidi Cullinan. And then if you really want a deep cut, I am also on Tumblr. My address there is Cullinan Katsudan, so Cullinan, but then the K, Katsudan. And if you know what that is, it means you watch Yuri on Ice like I do. And so that's like all anime and me being a total geek. I don't talk about writing. I don't really even talk about my books. I just retweet anime and be a total otaku. And so if you want to come there and see that, you're welcome. And if you're like, what are you even talking about? Feel free to pass.
Thanks for being here. Next we have Libby.
Okay, so I have a website, which is www.libbyastaire.weebly.com, and that also has the links to my social media, and I'm on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter, and maybe I will be on there like twice a year. So the best is my my website or Facebook.
Yeah, thank you very much for being here. And as you guys know, I am Christy Stratus, and for The Writer's Edge, you can find us right here, youtube.com/The Writer's Edge Show. It's the same exact thing on Facebook, facebook.com/The Writer's Edge Show. And of course, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you can find out when we go live. As for me and myself as an author, you can find me at christystratus.com. I am also on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. I have a separate YouTube channel. And there's a lot more. You can find me on Pinterest as well. I'm on most social media platforms. And make sure that you are going to come back here on January 23rd. That will be our next The Writer's Edge show. And that's going to be at 9 p.m. Eastern time that time. And we're going to have a panel of book reviewers and interviewers. And they're going to be talking about what they look for in the books they read, and a lot more that are going to give you helpful tips as an author. So Definitely stay tuned for those helpful insights. I hope you guys have wonderful holidays. Enjoy, and I wish you a happy new year. And again, thank you so much for being here to both our panelists and everyone out there watching. We will see you soon.